Hi everyone, this is Deirdre Benjamin. We're going to cover Chapter 1, Environment, Sustainability, and Science. So the environment encompasses both physical, chemical, and biological factors. They help determine the growth and survival of an organism or a community of organisms. And environmental science is an interdisciplinary science that encompasses physical, chemical, and biological science, as well as sociology, economics, and politics. That's why environmental science is a fun science to kind of study, because you get to take different kind of aspects and work them together into one major science. But if you don't want to, if you want to kind of spread your wings and study all different areas, environmental science is a really good science to do that. Now, ecology is one of the branches within environmental science, and it's the study of the abundance, distribution, and interactions of organisms in relationship with their environment. The idea about sustainability in the environment has changed over the years. In the beginning, many human use of the resources, was determined, our use of wildlife and fisheries was determined largely by our needs or perceived needs. The Earth's forest resources appeared to be inexhaustible, and the wildlife was abundant. Rivers, lakes, oceans, coastal waters were teeming with fish. We were fully confident of the environment's capacity to produce an abundance of resources and to absorb and process our waters. This is a wonderful painting kind of exhibiting this endless wilderness. This painting is by Albert Bertstold in the 19th century American landscape. However, with the world population being much larger, endless landscapes with, endless resources will just never will never be the norm. So we've started to manage our resources. We realized the resources were dwindling. Scientific studies, especially between 1920 and 1940, brought new knowledge on how to better manage our natural resources. For example, the forestry industry began to replant after harvest, which reduces pest and fire threats. Fish and wildlife industry set catch and bag limits to allow wild stock to rebound, and actively restocking lakes and streams with fish. Such actions help maintain these resources. Now, we're still running out. You will probably in your lifetime, wild caught fish is something that will be very hard to come by, or you will pay an exorbitant amount of money for wild caught fish, because almost all of our fisheries are overfished. In the 1950s, there became a conflict for resources. Our population exploded. We were about 152 million in the United States, and demand for resources increased. And as this happened, conflicts increased. A housing boom created a demand for timber from the national forests, while simultaneously there was an increased public interest for the same forests for recreation, wildlife, and protection. And this was the first time we really had an environmental battle ever exist in the United States, and hopefully we'll have another large environmental battle in the future. So rapid population growth in the United States after World War II placed growing demands on national forests and other public lands for resources such as timber and other ecosystem services, such as recreation and water management, grazing management, etc. So what happened was policies were created to address these conflicts about the use of our lands. So between the commercial interests and managing clean water and conservation of species, as well as recreational interests, the goal is to maintain human well-being. This is a multifaceted concept and includes life's basics, such as food and shelter, but also accounts for good health, social stability, and personal freedom. This is kind of showing you a little bit about the changes. This is a satellite image of the Earth at night. and it shows you where most people live, which is, of course, where the lights are. And it shows the amount of changes in the Earth's ecosystem at the hands of development. You can see the United States is quite developed, as well as some European and Asian countries. You also see South America starting to become pretty developed, as well as South Africa. A lot of these areas are becoming super developed, and we're going to need to learn how to manage our resources if we want to keep the population, the human population, exponentially increasing. So a new kind of idea came to fruition because of all these conflicts, and this is sustainability. You'll hear a lot of people talk about sustainability. Sustainability is maintaining the ability to accommodate three important sources of change. The world is changing, we are changing, and we are a changing world. So the world is changing means environments are under constant change. We are changing, technology changes our needs for our ecosystem services, and we've always changed this over time, and human impacts alter the environment. So sustainability is the idea that we're going to meet the needs of the present in equitable and fair fashion without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This idea for sustainability of resources is one thing. Now, in the next session, we'll talk about sustainability in terms of companies who call themselves sustainable companies. They must meet three different aspects, but we're talking here about sustainability of resources. Hopefully in the future we'll learn to sustainably manage our resources. Now, ecosystems. All the organisms and their physical and chemical environments is what we call an ecosystem. And an ecosystem includes both biota and abiotic factors. Biota factors are living organisms, plants, animals, bacteria. Abiotic are the non-living elements of the environment, and these include water, temperature, minerals, etc. Ecosystems are integrated systems. They are an integrated system of both the living and non-living parts of the biota and abiotic factors. For example, bacteria converting nitrogen so plants may use it. This is an integrated system. And these systems also include energy and matter that must flow in and out of the ecosystem. And this is where we get our water cycle, our carbon cycle, all of our different cycles in the ecosystem. So this is just a great image that's showing you how we kind of depend on the inflows and outflows of matter and energy. See sunlight and materials in, and there's a transformation that happens, and then out or outflow are heat and materials like carbon, nitrogen, and water. Now, ecosystems are defined at scale. So a rotting log can be considered an ecosystem, a forest could be considered an ecosystem, all the way up to a continent could be considered an ecosystem. So ecosystems can be very tiny in nature, or they can be really large in nature. Ecosystems are described and studied in the absence of humans. This is really, really hard to do, of course, in today's day and age. This is why a lot of people always want to try and get out and find areas in which humans have never been. It's very hard to find that, but systems behave differently with humans in them. So we like to study ecosystems without human involvement to see how they react without our hand kind of in the matter. This is showing you just three different sizes of ecosystems. So a rotting log all the way to, the Great Lakes, all the way to the Earth could be an ecosystem. They provide humans with many services. Provisioning services, regulating services, cultural services, supporting services. I think one of the biggest things is we forget that ecosystems do provide both cultural and supporting services. They're really important. And here are some examples of the different types of services that ecosystems provide us. So they provide us with these provisioning services. Food, water, the air we breathe. Humans are notable for our ability to modify, often simplify, ecosystems in order to increase their provisioning services. So how can we get more out of this? For example, an agricultural field of corn provides a larger amount of food to humans, but supports far fewer species than grasslands that once grew there. So while we are increasing our food production, we're also decreasing biodiversity in that area, and we don't realize that. Regulating services of ecosystems, they control the important conditions and services. Processes such as climate, the flow of water, the absorption of pollutants, these services are a consequence of the integrated, self-regulating nature of ecosystems. And we throw these off all the time. Cultural services, spiritual and recreational benefits, hiking, ecotourism, holy sites, the Grand Canyon, Yosemite Valley, all these are really amazing things. And in fact, there's been a lot of studies that show you that you actually may get better in a hospital 20% faster if you have a connection with nature while you're in the hospital. So you'll see a lot more hospitals putting in natural light, etc. These are the cultural services. And supporting services, so basic ecosystem processes, nutrient cycles, soil formation, pollination, all of these things are fabulous. I'm just going to skip over this slide for right now. I just want to kind of show you this, but you know, Lake Mead is this top picture here. We actually created Lake Mead with the Hoover Dam, and so it was gradually shrinking. Water exceeds the water supply in the Colorado River right now, so you can actually see the line. This is how far Lake Mead has decreased, and so we really need to start looking at our water resources. And when we get to the water session, you'll see California is really struggling with drought right now. So are 5 states actually. I'm going to skip over these 2 slides real quick, but because I want to get to, here we go, I want to get to this important thing, which is the principles of ecosystem function. So processes regulated by biotic and abiotic factors. So homeostasis is abound in ecosystems. This is the idea that they want to get into a balance. A homeostasis kind of is where everything is averaged out, so it's in a good place. Over time, the sizes of plants and animal populations tend to fluctuate above and below average values. The amount of the chemical elements nitrogen and phosphorus found in lakes or soils vary from time to time, but they maintain long-term average values. And so I want to talk about 2 things which are called negative feedbacks and positive feedbacks. What's really interesting is in terms, when we talk about positive feedback in this sense in environmental conservation, it's actually negative. It's a bad thing. Whereas we talk about positive feedback in the environment, when we talk about negative things in the environment, we actually talk about the environment trying to get back into that homeostasis mode. So the growth of algae and the availability of nutrients that control their growth provide an example of the negative feedback in which each change is reversed by the other. Increasing nutrients increase algae growth, and this then diminishes the nutrients and subsequently diminishes algae growth. So as nutrients increase, algae growth increases. High algae populations then deplete nutrient and algal growth begins to decline, and then as algal growth begins to decline, nutrients begin to increase. So it kind of just works its way through. The next slide that I'm going to show you, deforestation erosion can generate a positive feedback, which is actually a bad thing in this case. So on a hillside in Guatemala, loss of forest stimulates erosion, which then results in the loss of more forest and further erosion. And so this is a really big deal because once one thing happens, the dominoes keep happening. You know, they keep falling down. So a positive feedback is actually a bad thing in environmental conservation. So a couple other things. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to start a new video. So just bear with me and click on the second part.